Good morning, everybody. Or it's probably not morning for you, but it's 3 a.m. right now for me. So we're making this video as a direct response to some of the comments on one of our other recent videos about ranking the ideologies based on death count. And there's some good criticisms because it's hard to accurately perform a task like that with something like chat. It omits a lot of information and a lot of periods in history, so we can't necessarily gauge those numbers. That's a very, very fair criticism. However, some of the comments on that are less agreeable and have been implying, basically denying the numbers associated with communism, and then some more sentiment saying or implying that capitalism would or is necessarily also high on that list in terms of millions or tens of millions of deaths cost. And um, I have been thinking about those comments a little bit because I found them interesting, and that's the very reason I'm uh, making this video right now to address some of that sentiment and offer maybe a perspective on capitalism, quote unquote capitalism. So I'm curious if anyone else kind of thinks this way when we see people talk about capitalism and communism, etc., in the current discourse. What I think of is the word capitalism is like, I don't know exactly what it means because it often has a like a very negative connotation with it when people use it, especially in a certain way, like in the comments on the video. But I feel like that's not fair because then it's not descriptive, and it should be as descriptive as possible so we can accurately speak about these things and use the most relevant terms. So when people say capitalism, in my mind just thinks of free markets because that's what it is. It's a free market system, and it's not. When you think of a free market system is not an ideology. It's a natural state that exists in a vacuum without regulation from a intervening authority. So when people call capitalism slash free markets, or you can offer another definition, when you call that an ideology, that doesn't make sense to me. I suppose people can be capitalistic in mind, and they can exercise self-interest and exploitation, so to speak, but that doesn't seem to me an ideology any more so than just self-preservation is an ideology, and selfishness and the natural drive towards competition, that sort of thing. So in a vacuum, the free market is a state of existence. It's what's going to occur. Well, have you ever, any economics class, the first thing you learn is the supply demand graph, which creates an equilibrium. And that supply and demand, those forces are assumptions in the graph, and a free market is just the relaxing of those assumptions, allowing them to meet well where they meet without anything pushing the lines one way or another. And if you're a business, all you really care about is supplying your goods and services to people for as much money as possible. And the only thing that's going to prevent you from doing that is another company that's doing the same thing, therefore creating this nature of competition where you and that other company and any other company who wants to engage in this, they are all dealing with the same constraint, and that is the competition that arises out of the best company's ability to produce a high quality product or service at the most competitive price. And that's what competition is, and that's what people say when they use the word competition. The only thing preventing that phenomenon from occurring is an authoritative entity imposing a high barrier to entry for certain industries or markets and certain laws and regulations, which might shift the cost of existing as a business within a certain market towards a certain front or back end. So that also acts as a sorting mechanism or a set of obstacles, a barrier to entry that prevents smaller businesses from starting and becoming competitive. So if you really think about it, free market is the most natural state, and free market with imposed regulation is a derivative state of that, and that is any form of government regulation or laws imposed on these entities or institutions. And this is not to say that those regulations are bad. We need them to create the incentive structures which drive the corporations in the right direction and toward creating the highest quality good and service for the most people at the best price. That's really what it comes down to. And you want to mitigate externalities like maybe things that companies don't keep in mind when it comes to pollution, pollutants, and waste. So that's all important, and we have to create the best system for those businesses to operate within. But when people talk about communism, comparing it to capitalism or free markets, as though those two things are the same, that it's not. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Communism is a very, very, very rigid form of authoritative imposition of government structure that they force top down onto everybody in pursuit of a completely different goal, a so-called collective goal, and that pursuit kills tens of millions of people. That's the point that we're making with that. The pursuit of buyers and sellers trying to perform an efficient transaction, it's not the same. So if you want to offer a definition of or of capitalism that paints it as an ideology or that explains some of these things that you are kind of accusing, then you can do that. But I thought I would uh, bring one example of my own, and that's the one that you've been staring at for the past few minutes. So this is an example of communism and Mao's China that you've probably heard of, but haven't probably thought of like what that really looks like or the implications of what a one or a no child policy would mean and what it meant for months. Starting in 1980, there was the childless 100 days policy, which you may or may not have heard of. And that was the first 100 days in 1980 when this policy was instituted that literally sought to kill all babies and perform tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of forced abortions over a 3-month period in China. They hired mercenaries to round up pregnant women, and well, I, like it was extremely rudimentary. We won't get graphic, but it's insanely dystopian, nightmare stuff that you probably have never heard of. Like what they actually did in that policy. It wasn't just you can't have any more kids anymore. It was something a lot more sinister than that. And they estimate at least 1 million forced abortions resulting from that. And this article goes into some of the after effects of something like this, which is it's a difficult read. But we'll go into one more thing. Uh, in case you're still not satisfied and you want to cling to the communism capitalism comparison, and you want to stand by communism and die on that hill, well, go ahead. Yeah, if you don't like Wikipedia, it's whatever, but it's a insanely good way to consolidate information. And we'll look at genocides just as a, kind of blanket category. Another point of view when it comes to this whole ideology issue. Oh, what do you know? Okay, Holocaust. We'll take the lowest. 5 million. What is that going to be? Nazism, fascism. We saw that on the graph. The Ukrainian famine killed millions of Ukrainians. What was that? Soviet consequence. So that was communism. German atrocity committed against Soviet POWs. One and the same with the first category there. Cambodian genocide. Yep, so that's authoritative genocide by the Cambodian state. Labor camps, forced labor camps. Yeah, so that's not capitalism. It's some form of communism. Bangladesh genocide. More Nazi war crimes. Russian Empire, systemic mass murder. So, yeah, this isn't looking good, even if you take the higher ends of the estimates of some of these. But you don't even get to the Crusades until all the way down here, 200,000 to a million. So comparing these things are not the same. And if you want to do that, you can. But sure, we can take only recent history. Well, that's probably relevant enough to prove whatever point that is being made. And I'll say it again, I don't know why people don't really draw more attention to this sort of semantic issue that some other people have gotten away with pushing in the past, 20 years with this capitalism thing, because I've always thought it was a good word. And now it's really, really being portrayed in a way that is meant to carry negative connotation. So if we need to be more descriptive, we're going to do that. Free markets, that's what it is. So um, we need to be more clear about what we're talking about, and we certainly need to be more clear if we're going to say something like capitalism has caused more deaths than communism. That's a crazy thing to say. And if you're on my video saying that, please provide some evidence. And if you're saying the Chinese, that's not a good look for you. All right, thanks.